learning to love who you are and being able to see yourself separate from the things that you struggle with, that even though you're struggling with them, they don't define who you are.
Welcome back to the Happiness and Progress podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. I am really excited because today we are talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. If you don't have OCD, and even if you don't have anxiety, I think you're going to learn a lot in this episode about your thoughts, overcoming some thoughts, and a few things you need to know about those thoughts that get in your mind. So if they're not OCD thoughts, but maybe they're just negative thoughts about your life, or maybe they're just this negative, self-depreciating soundtrack you've been listening to since you were a kid, I think this will help here too. All right, let me introduce you to our guest. I am so excited that you get to hear from Cassidy Sanchez. She started an Instagram page called Love Cass Co. after she was diagnosed with OCD and generalized anxiety disorder. In this conversation, we talk about what that diagnosis did for her in terms of bringing some more light to her life. We talk about some of the tools she uses for intrusive thoughts, and we talk about a whole lot more. So let's get to it. Cassidy, I'm so excited you're on the podcast today.
Me too. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's just jump right in. You talk a lot about anxiety and OCD on your Instagram page. And so I want to talk about what that looks like in your life. How does anxiety and OCD show up for you in your life?
So I've actually had OCD since I was 12, and I didn't really know that I had it until probably like 3 years ago, and kind of accompanied with that was anxiety. So I just recently kind of discovered that I had it. And then once I learned all the signs and the symptoms, I was like, oh my gosh, I've had this my whole entire life. So, but I mean, anxiety, just kind of like general anxiety disorder is what I have been diagnosed with. And then also obsessive compulsive disorder, which just kind of, for me, OCD shows up as like obsessive thoughts about things that I fear the most. Some people have like OCD with like cleaning and contamination, but I just have OCD thoughts, like obsessive thoughts about lots of different things. And then anxiety, yeah, just kind of a general sense of anxiety around lots of fearful things and like things that I'm anticipating coming up with my relationship, lots of things like that. So that's kind of just how it shows up for me in my daily life.
When did you get diagnosed?
Probably 4 months ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So huge. The diagnosis for me was huge. How has your life kind of shifted as you learned what was actually happening inside of you, inside your brain?
I feel like a huge sense of relief. It sounds kind of weird, but like being able to put a name to what I've dealt with my whole life, like has just given me relief. Finally, I know what this is. And now I can learn the tools to like tackle it. It's really like been such a blessing. Like when she diagnosed me, I was like, this is the best day of my life. Like, I'm so grateful.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Because I feel the exact same way. When I was diagnosed, I had told someone the same day, they just diagnosed me with obsessive compulsive disorder. And the person that I told said, how dare they? They don't know you. That's not fair. Like they were trying to stand up for me and they cared a lot about me. So they were trying to fight my fight for me. But I felt so opposite. I felt so relieved. I felt like I finally understood what was happening inside my head. And it was just that like sigh of relief with that diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I felt the exact same way. I've also heard people just kind of like a little bit defensive, which I can understand. But for me, it was just like, I have an answer. Like, and I've wondered forever, like, what is wrong with me?
And I don't think there is anything wrong with you. You know, I think it's just a
Yeah.
little bit of our brains working a little bit differently.
For me, I did think something was wrong with me, but with the diagnosis, I'm finally able to see that like it's actually become kind of like a superpower, in my opinion. Like it's become something that I enjoy learning about, and I see like strengths that come from my diagnosis, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like that we felt so much relief from our diagnoses, because I think that can kind of, if someone's thinking, oh, I think this is going on in my brain and I'm having a hard time with XYZ, maybe this can be the push of, you know, maybe go get the diagnosis. It's a lot easier to not be in the dark.
I 100% agree. Since having that light turned on and like knowing what it is that I struggle with and giving it a name, I truly feel like I can conquer it. Like I feel like I am brave against the struggle that I have.
Hmm. What have been some of the tools that you've learned that have already started helping?
So the biggest thing for me and something that I talk about a lot on my Instagram is that thoughts don't have to have meaning. Like that idea that my therapist told me and we kind of worked through it has just changed my life because I think sometimes we fall prey to thinking if I think it, I want it, or if I think it, I put it there. But learning that like our brains just naturally think things and we don't necessarily put it there, we don't want it has helped, especially with OCD, that like my thoughts don't always have to mean something and I can just observe it and just let it pass.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I feel like, because with OCD, especially, the more you try to fight the thought, the more it's like, this is the thought, this is the thought, this is the thought you're having.
Yeah, yeah. The more you try and like figure out why did I think that? Do I actually want it to happen? And then you just kind of enter into the rabbit hole cycle.
Hmm.
But lately, my therapist told me to look at it like to give it a character. So for me, it's a dragon. I don't know why it was a
Hmm.
dragon. But she told me to put the dragon in a cage, and then she's like, every time the dragon tries to get your attention, she's like, naturally we want to pet it, right? We want to kind of be like, it's okay, calm it down, don't be so mad or don't start spiraling. But she was like, the more you pet the dragon, the more it's getting reinforcement from you. So now she's like, imagine the dragon in the cage. When your thoughts come, just see the dragon trying to get your attention, like, hi, yeah, I notice you. I know you want me to touch you, but I'm just gonna let you. I'm just gonna leave you alone. And
Hmm.
that just changed, literally changed my life.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's huge. And with the OCD, I don't think a lot of people know this, but with OCD, some of the thoughts are just so horrifying. And you're like, why am I thinking this? This is literally my biggest fear. And when I was able to recognize, like, okay, I'm going to observe the thought, but also recognize I'm having this thought because I am really afraid of this. And that helps
Mhm.
me kind of observe, recognize, and move forward in my day
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
ruminating on it. This has been 4 months since you've been able to learn new tools and have kind of that weight lifted off of you of what's happening. What would you want, 12-year-old Cassidy, who is dealing with this, to know?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I've kind of had to like go back to that time in my life because when I would share my experiences with my parents or with friends, they really thought that like I was crazy. Like,
Mm,
why would you be thinking these things? So I would love to go back and just tell her that, like, what you're experiencing, you're not alone in what you're experiencing. A lot of people struggle with OCD, especially like in the thoughts. And I would just reassure her that, like, there's tools and ways to overcome it. And one day you will be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which took me a long time because I didn't, just having the name to what it is has really helped me. But just kind of reassuring her that, like, you're not crazy. There's a lot of people like you. And it's a very normal thing to struggle with anxiety and OCD. And there's like I just love thinking of like my gang of people that have or my group of friends that have OCD and we're just like OCD friends and we all can like have empathy for each other.
hmm. That must have been really hard going through this and having these thoughts that nobody could relate to or nobody could understand.
Yeah, it
How
like
how did you deal with that as a little 12-year-old?
I think I honestly don't really know. I think I just kind of got used to it and I but I knew that my heart didn't want the things to come true that I would
Mhm.
think. And so I just knew, I'm like, I know that I don't actually want this to happen. So I just kind of, I think I just used that to help myself keep going. And it literally wasn't until about 3 years ago that I, like, opened up to a friend of mine, and she was like, "I struggle with the same thing," and I was like, "No way." Like,
Oh my
"Wait,
gosh.
have you had this thought? Have you had this thought?" "Yes, yes," and then I'm like, "We're the same," and then I did research and found, oh, it just opened up so many, like, helpful doors.
I have goosebumps because I just think so strongly that if we share these things that like live within us that are dark and scary, and whether it's this or something that happened to us when we were a kid, or a way like our partner was treating us, or whatever, we could go on and on. But there is someone out there that's going to say, oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah, that
Uh,
that's so powerful, yeah.
You have created this community online, and I just love it so much because I don't think people understand OCD. I think it's like it's probably one of the things people understand the least. But I love that you have been sharing all of these different messages about OCD and anxiety, and that so many people have been saying that. Me too, me too. I feel this. I'm there with you. Tell me how that feels.
So I'm thinking, I posted one video and I don't know, you probably saw it, but it was like the OCD thoughts I have during the day.
Mhm.
And I got like, I think almost 200 comments of people saying like you're saying, I had that same exact thought. I thought I was alone. Oh my gosh, this opened so many doors. I've had people say like, I've had all these thoughts and I didn't know it was OCD. And it's just like, for me, it's been incredible to see that's a video, like you're saying, just sharing simple thoughts. Well, I guess complex thoughts from OCD can reach so many people and help them, like help them in the ways that I wish I could had, a few years ago. So it's just been like life changing and it just makes me want to share more of these like scary thoughts I have because so many people are resonating with them.
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm.
been really, really cool to see.
It takes the power away from them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, what are you hoping that you can do for other people that are dealing with this?
I my phrase that I always use is like you're not alone.
Mhm.
Um like we mentioned, when I was younger, there was just years that I feel like I fought my battles in like total silence. And just by finally one day talking to my roommate about it, and she was like, I've never told anyone either. And then suddenly we both, like you said, felt empowered. So I hope that by sharing this and this platform that I use or through Instagram, that I can just help people feel like they are not alone and that there's people like them out there, like me, like I'm like, we're the same, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm just like you. And here's some of the things that I've done that have helped me. That's really my ultimate goal, I feel like, with Instagram.
I think that's so cool that we can do something like that on a little app.
Yeah.
So we actually talked a little bit about this, and when I talk about OCD, it like revs my OCD up. It's like my OCD is like, oh, now really bad stuff's gonna happen because you've been talking about it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with? How have you been dealing with that? Because you're also putting yourself out there to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's true. Like posting those thoughts, I'm like, oh, I forgot I had some of them. Like, oh, I forgot I actually would think those things or those things popped into my head. Um, I do like I have for me, I do routines. I have morning routines that for me are just like I do it every day and I have to do it. Like I can't live without that. That has truly been my saving grace. And part of that is writing down the things that pop into my head and just seeing them for what they are and then like what's the word, like changing the thought.
Mhm.
So like, I'll write down, for example, I've had like OCD thoughts about maybe I'm gay, like that's 100% a thought that I've had, so I write it down and I take it out of my brain, and that's just something that helps me to not get back into the spiral
Mm-hmm.
of the fear and the thoughts. But it's true. Once you kind of talk about it, OCD is like, oh, you remembered I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, how can I bother you today? So the morning
It
routine,
really is.
the morning routine for me is like armor. Like I put
Mm-hmm.
on my armor before I start my day, and it's what helps me the most.
Can you walk us through that? So if you write down that sentence, maybe I'm gay, what is
Mhm.
the reframing of that sentence?
So I kind of talk about the dragon again.
Yeah.
So I sometimes I'll even draw the dragon and I put little quote bubbles. Like maybe I'm gay. Maybe I'm gonna hurt somebody that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are my other ones? I've had like stuff with religion, like maybe I hate God, whatever the thought is. And then, but I draw in the dragon so that I recognize that this is my OCD speaking and it's not Cassidy. So I'll draw myself like Cassidy in like a stick figure, and then I'll draw the dragon with all the thoughts around it. So I can separate myself and see that I'm not the thoughts. Those thoughts come from obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's what I do. That's like the physical way of drawing it, but like if I'm like need to do it on the go and I'm in the car, I'll literally sit and I'll say out loud, I just had the thought that I think that maybe I'm gay. I'm recognizing in this moment that this is a thought that's coming from OCD. I have two choices. I can feed the thought and actually try and figure out if I'm gay, or I can just recognize it as a thought that I'm having and I don't need to give it any power.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, all right, turn the music on full blast, roll my window down. What are we doing next? Like I just redirect. And that's like my kind of in the moment thing that I do.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's so powerful. And really, all of the things that we've talked about, it's taking the power away from the thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it comes
OCD
down
just like wants to just control everything. And so it feels so good when I'm like, excuse me, Cynthia or OCD or whatever your name is, Dragon. Like, excuse me, you don't get to tell me what I'm gonna think and believe today.
to.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy gets to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's really, really powerful. We've talked a lot about OCD. Is there a tool that you rely on for the anxiety?
meditation.
Oh my gosh, me too. We are the
Okay,
same. We are the same. I love it.
yes. I love meditation. Even if it's like a minute in the morning, like that is still enough to just kind of bring me from like 100 just back down. And but I try and do it every day and do affirmations with it, or I do like sometimes I'll use like the Headspace app. That one's been helpful for me. But yeah, meditation truly is what I use for anxiety. Just
Mm-hmm. Did
calm
you just
myself.
start that 4 months ago?
I've actually done meditations for a while. My mother-in-law is like she's really like an avid meditator. And so she's taught me a lot about it. And so before I even found out that like it is anxiety that I deal with, I'm like, this feels really good. I really
Mhm.
like this thing. So I've just kept up with it since then. And yeah, it makes a huge difference for me.
Mhm. I like that you said even just a minute makes a difference because I think it might be the Headspace Facebook group that I'm in. When someone misses a day, they're like, "Oh, my streak is ruined. I can't go back on or I'm not meditating long enough or I need to meet all these different criteria." But meditation really truly is just a tiny tiny part of your day that will make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I don't I don't like to get like down on myself when I don't do 10 minutes because 10 minutes is hard. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I've even done 10 minutes multiple times, like maybe twice, but like gradually working up to 10 minutes. But like if I don't have enough time and I'm feeling super anxious, I'm like, we're just going to do a minute right now. And
Mhm.
that just has to be enough for that day. And most of the time it is.
Wow, that's really great. How have your parents responded, since kind of learning what this was that you were dealing with when you were a little girl?
So it's really interesting. Both of my parents, they didn't really know how to respond when I was younger. They didn't really
Mhm.
know how to help me. But since kind of getting diagnosed and, like, sharing with them, my mom's like, "Oh my gosh, I think I have that too." My mom's like, "I have thoughts like that, and I do things like that," but when I was 12, she couldn't really, like, I don't know, I don't think she could relate back then. So for her, it's been eye-opening 'cause she's like, "I think I struggle with the same thing." And
Mhm.
so we've kind of been able to, like, share and, like, help each other, um, and they're super supportive, and they ask me about it, like, "How are you doing?" And I'm doing a lot better now than I was a while ago, but yeah, my mom and I have, like, this bond now because she's like, "I totally have that also." I'm like, "Well, maybe you should talk to someone." So that's been kinda cool.
That's really cool because it is this generational disconnect. I think our generation, and I don't know if we're in the same generation. Are you a millennial? You're not a millennial,
Um,
are you?
I am. No,
Okay.
I think I was
You,
born in '94.
if you're not a millennial, you missed it by like a day. And I'm an elder millennial. Anyway,
Okay. Uh-huh.
um, but us, like, I think we have more access to mental health resources and to be able to help bring another generation that didn't have that access and had a worse stigma than we have today. I think that's
Absolutely.
really, really special. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It truly like, my mom, she's also kind of recognized that she has a little bit of a depression, and, like, she's doing amazing because she has the resources. And I totally agree. Like, for us, it's like something like I talk to people about this all the time, but,
Mhm.
like, she was until I kind of shared with her, she didn't really realize, right? Like, it's just not as well known for them, I guess. But now it's becoming like we can have a podcast, we can have a conversation about this. And I'm like, this is incredible how it's
Mhm.
changing.
Mhm. I think that's really cool, and that you can be, part of that change. That's really
Yeah.
cool. For someone who's listening, who's maybe in the position of your mom or someone who's just been too afraid to take the first steps and they know that something's up, what would you say to them?
First, I would just honestly send them so much love and,
Mm.
like, tell them that if I was sitting next to them, I would just embrace them and just let them know that, like, they are not alone. I would just drill that into their head. I'm like, "You are not alone, and there's people out there that love you and wanna talk to you and want to relate with you." And I would also just give them options of, what their first steps could be. For me, I did the NOCD app. I don't know if you've
Yes, it's
heard of it.
so
Yeah.
good.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. I just was like, I need somebody specific to OCD, and they had amazing therapists. And I actually won a giveaway, and that's why I did it. But it's relatively inexpensive, and you don't have to go every day. I started just doing once a month. I'm like, all I can do is once a month. And the therapist was incredible. And every time I saw her, I was able to talk about my week, what I wanted to work on. And she always gave me like homework and followed up with me after. And I just think that that was for me, like, I needed that. I needed to talk to somebody, and NOCD was just the perfect way to do that, and she just knew exactly what I was going through. So, I feel like I would suggest talking to somebody, a professional, if they feel like that's where they're at, if they're comfortable in doing that, and then if not, if they're not ready to talk to somebody, I would honestly just, like, reassure them that, like, you're not alone, and, like, I'm a friend, right? You can talk to me. I can refer you to other people that have experienced something, and we can just create, like, a friend group. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, just because I just remember feeling so isolated and, like, not knowing what to do, and I just
Mhm.
feel for people that are in that position. So I would just be like, "You are not alone."
Mhm. Yeah, you can feel it in the passion. You can feel it from the passion and the emotion in your voice when you say that you are not alone. Um, so I did want to say about the NOCD app.
Mhm.
It's virtual. It takes insurance. They'll find someone that is under your insurance carrier. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the therapist I had, she was on all the time messaging
Mhm.
me, "How are you? Did you do your homework? Did you?" She'd help me watch Netflix documentaries of like things that like would kind of scare like trigger me. But then after she'd be like, "Okay, let's go about it. What was scary? If that was scary, that's okay. What wasn't scary?" And like always following up. And
Yeah.
I just had a best friend through the app, really,
Wow.
like through virtual best friend, and she was just always there for me.
Yeah, I love that because I love that they have so much experience with OCD. That's what they do. So, like we've been talking about, you're not alone. So, when they're talking to you, they've already heard from a ton of other people with the exact same thoughts, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that for a while it got really bad. What does that look like when it was really bad versus now?
So I when I talked to my therapist, she kind of explained to me that um if I was experiencing these thoughts for longer than an hour a day, if I ruminated for more than an hour a day, then that would be considered um a diagnosis. That's when she would give me a diagnosis.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that varies from person to person, but I remember, like, on my worst days, ruminating on specific thoughts for more than, like, 6 or 7 hours a day. Like, my
Mm.
mind just would not leave it. And I'd be at work ruminating, I'd go to the gym ruminating, I'd come home, and I think the biggest sign or the biggest, um, I guess, what's the word? Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that, like, would separate myself from my relationships because I was so consumed by these thoughts that I just didn't think about anything else.
Mhm.
And I even feel like I had memory loss because I wasn't like, I would put something on the counter, but I was so consumed that I'm like, "What did I just do?"
Mm.
Like, it just affected every part of my life because I was living in the rabbit hole,
Mhm.
in the spiral.
We talked about the freedom of that diagnosis now, but now that you have the diagnosis, that you have tools, you've worked with a therapist, when you look to your future, what does that look like? It does it look different than it once did?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like, I feel like it makes me emotional to think about because I just remember being in the darkness, but now, like, I have a tool belt, literally like this invisible tool belt. I know exactly what to do when it comes up again. I know exactly what to do when I ruminate, and it's like so much hope and light that I know that I'm not going to be defined by this diagnosis. That actually maybe even one day I can say that I don't have OCD anymore, right? It's not going to be something I struggle with. I can't say that now, but I know what to do, like I said, when it comes. And I'm like, I it doesn't scare me anymore. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
bring it. Bring it on, OCD. Like I know how to deal with you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. I'm so glad that you got diagnosed. I'm so glad what you're doing on Instagram because I think it's going to help people get on that same road that has brought you so much more peace. Okay, before we go, I like to ask my guests what your number one tip is for finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in between.
My number one tip, I feel like, would be learning to love who you are and being able to see yourself separate from the things that you struggle with. That even though you're struggling with them, they don't define who you are.
That's so good. I think that there's so much that everyone can take away from this episode, even if they're not dealing with OCD and anxiety. You're not your thoughts. You are separate from your struggles. And so I really, really
Mhm.
appreciate you coming on the podcast today and sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've loved being with you and answering all these questions.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Cassidy. Of course, as always, all of her information is in show notes. I also linked the NOCD app if you're interested. And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness and Progress.